Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 604 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mike Ayalon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and an author. Our sixth book just came out. It's called I'm So Beautiful, It's Ridiculous: Unleashing and Promoting Strength, Self-Worth, and Real Sisterhood. So go and pick up that book on Amazon or Barnes& and Noble today. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring college students together, and more specifically, fraternity and sorority students together. Fun fact, my son Jacob is about to graduate from Middle Tennessee State University in December after only 2.5 years as an undergrad. But I have to tell you, he's been living with his buddies off campus ever since he was a freshman, first semester, and he had absolutely no idea what a lease was all about. Okay. He had no clue. I mean, this guy has no idea what he's signing. He just handed it to me and said, Dad, should I sign this thing? And so I'm thinking to myself, we have done a terrible job in terms of educating college students about leases. And I don't remember, in all 604 episodes of the podcast, I don't remember a single episode where we talked about leases for our college students. So today is your day. Stan Lucas is the co-founder and COO of LeaseWisely. LeaseWisely is the first and only tenant empowerment platform. They believe tenants should have leases that are fair and easy to understand, access to technology and data, and a network that supports them throughout their entire lease journey. Welcome to the show, Stan.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Excited to
Hey,
be here.
it is a pleasure to have you on the show. You've got some expertise that I know is going to be able to help the college students who are listening right now. So we really appreciate you being on the show. Now, you decided on IU Bloomington, one of my favorite places for your undergraduate experience. I'm wondering, why did you decide that IU was the right place for you?
Well, it's kind of an interesting story, and the funny thing is that it actually started with some influence from a Greek organization. So I was growing up on Long Island in New York, and I was sitting in homeroom one day, and I heard over the announcements that a fraternity for teachers called Phi Delta Kappa was actually offering a scholarship to go to a summer camp on IU Bloomington's campus. And growing up in New York, I knew the only thing I knew about my college experience was what I saw on TV. And I knew I wanted that, and I knew I was going to have to leave New York to do that. So I applied for the scholarship and got it. And they flew about 100 kids out to IU Bloomington. And I stepped on that campus, and I knew that was what I wanted. I saw the big limestone buildings. I saw the students hanging out, in the Arboretum and in the Union. Saw the beautiful big fraternity and sorority houses on Greek Row, and I knew this is where I needed to be to get that college experience. So I left Long Island. After my senior year, I came back to Bloomington, and I never looked back. And actually, still an active alum, still have season tickets for football, have an apartment on campus, and my wife and I are, we'll be the first ones to tell you that we're super fans. And this is definitely a biased opinion, but it's hard to understand people that have been to Bloomington and didn't choose to come to IU for us.
Yeah, I listen, I totally get it. The fraternity and sorority houses in particular are just intoxicating for somebody who's a Greek life fan like me. The first time I was at IU Bloomington, I actually stayed at the AO Pi house on campus, which is a stunning, multi-million dollar
Oh,
facility.
geez.
Yeah, and it's stunning. And I went for a summer retreat as well, where I was there for 5 days with a bunch of college students, teaching them and learning with them for 5 days at the AO Pi house. And boy, oh boy, I mean, I would go for a run every day through the Greek village over there. And I was just like, oh my God. I mean, I know students who would give their right leg for some of those houses that are there on that campus. It's just really
It's
stunning
true.
if
It's
you've
true.
never been there. And interestingly enough, you joined Kappa Sigma there. I'm wondering what made you want to join Kappa Sigma over all the other fraternities that are on campus?
Yeah, so for me, I wouldn't say I chose Kappa Sigma over other organizations. For me,
Mhm.
it was more Kappa Sigma, or I actually probably wouldn't have even joined a Greek organization. Again, I was an out-of-state student. looking for ways to make the university smaller, kind of find my niche, find a way to leave a mark on the university. And I had gotten invited by a couple guys on my dorm floor to come to some parties and meet some guys. And then I started going to some of the smaller events so I could meet the brothers of the house. And little by little, I got to know them. And honestly, I was just jealous of what they had. It was deeper than a friendship, it was a true brotherhood. There were, the inside jokes, the activities they were involved in, intramurals, philanthropy, all these things, and then of course that secrecy of the ritual that bonded them and everything. I started to see those things, and I realized this is where I wanted to be. And I'll admit, I really didn't know a lot about fraternity life or even Kappa Sigma, other than like some celebrity brothers but what I knew was these guys were having a great time. These guys were making the most of their college experience. They were making the most of their brotherhood, and that was enough for me. I accepted my bid, and I never looked back. And I like to tell students now, I've been a Kappa Sig for over 30 years, and only 3.5 of them were while I was on campus. And again, I'm still involved today. I served on my executive committee as a secretary and president during my undergrad years, and I've been an alumni advisor since 2018. And I love giving back to Kappa Sig and to fraternities and actually to everyone who experiences Greek life because it's such an important part of what I've experienced over the year and really set me up for success as I left my university experience.
That's fantastic. I love that success story. Thank you so much for sharing that. Some of my closest friends are members of Kappa Sigma. As a matter of fact, one of them sat in on my doctoral defense. He was one of the people on my committee for my doctorate, and he's a past national president of Kappa Sigma. So shout out to Dr. Bill McKee, who is now vice president of academic affairs at Cumberland University.
Mm.
So some really significant Kappa Sigs out there. A lot of respect for that organization and what they've been able to build in terms of number of chapters and number of brothers. It's just really incredible. Now, what inspired you to create Lease Wisely, and why do you describe it as the first tenant empowerment platform?
It's actually it all came from an experience we had with a client of ours. We were actually my business partner and I had started a consulting firm, and we had started a contact center as a part of that consulting firm. And one of our largest clients was a massive property management company. I'm talking over 7,000 properties that were managing. They were managing. And we were responsible for handling tier one customer service calls. So every day we were handling hundreds of calls into the call center, a lot of different issues, things from late fees, maintenance issues, move out responsibilities, anything that they had a question about. And what we found as we were trying to figure out like what was causing these calls to come in, what were the main issues, what were the dispositions that we were hearing the most, we noticed that our answer was most likely this is in your lease. So we were constantly referring people to their lease and trying to help them understand the terms of that agreement. As we started to do that, we understood, okay, well, there's an issue here. People are not reading their leases, and if they are reading their leases, they're not understanding them. And there's a lot of reasons for that, whether it's the legalese or the complexity of the issues or just the length of the lease in general. But the responsibility definitely fell on that tenant. So what we also found as we were starting to look at this is we started to feel like there were also some places where tenants were not treated fairly. Whether it was a third-party payment processor that might have had some negligence that caused utilities to be cut off, we would sometimes find that the lease, not only was it difficult to understand, but it wasn't providing all the protections that you would expect for a tenant because they probably didn't even know what they didn't know. So fast forward a little bit, we end up leaving this client. But this idea of people not understanding their leases just like continued to bother us. So we started to talk to more people. And funny enough, just as you started this podcast, every single person we spoke to had a story about a lease, had a story about something that didn't go right or something they didn't understand or something that their students or kids didn't understand, including myself. My own daughters, when they were signing leases, we found things that we didn't know about or that we didn't understand in their lease after they had signed it. So we basically that's what started us down this path toward Lease Wisely, because what we call these lease lessons became something that we thought there's a way to fix this. There's a need for people to understand their lease, and it's our goal to empower tenants through a lease education platform to and to normalize this conversation about the dangers of signing a lease that you do not understand, and making sure that you are set up for success by understanding the rules and the responsibilities of yourself as a tenant, but also of your landlord and anyone that is managing the property that you're going to live in.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you created this along with your co-founder. I think it's so important. I mean, we're asking 18-year-olds to sign a contract which has, multiple pages, 10, 20, 30 pages sometimes, and understand all of that legalese. I mean, come on, they're 18-year-old kids. I mean, they haven't even started their freshman year. It's unrealistic to think that they're going to understand everything or take the time to read through all of those documents. I mean, for me as a business owner and as an entrepreneur, I've always tried to make it as easy as possible for my clients to do business with me. And if you look at a contract for Greek University for us to come and speak on your campus, it's one page. It is the simplest thing. It's like, here's the talk, here's the cost, here's the time, the date, right? And sign here. Like it's
Right.
literally that simple. And it's just unfortunate to see what has happened to leases now and just how extensive and how complicated some of them really are, even for an attorney to
Mhm.
read through and decipher what's going on there. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you've seen college students and even recent graduates make when they sign leases for the first time?
Yeah, and that one's easy. The number one mistake that students make is signing something that they don't understand.
Mm.
As you stated, leases are complex. The
Yeah.
average lease that we see, and we've reviewed now thousands of leases, the average length of a lease is 40 pages.
Oh my God.
And the amount of your rent, right? Your rent amount is not even one page of that lease. So imagine all the things that are now in that other 39 pages of the lease. They're important things. They're not just throwaway pages. These are all the rules that you are now going to live by. And if you have an issue later on or during your lease journey, ignorance is not going to be an excuse about why you had that. So, first things first, a lease is a legally binding document. And we as advisors and parents and mentors have a responsibility to our members, to our children, to our students to help them be set up for success by understanding what they're about to sign. So as you stated, your own son, my own daughters, like, are we doing the things that we have to do to normalize this conversation about leasing and about some of the pitfalls of leasing?
Yeah.
So our process is to break down that lease in seconds and create an understand or help that student create an understanding within minutes that could often take hours beyond what they probably have time for or want to spend time doing, so that it's much easier for them to understand what they're signing. So it's really something where we want to set that student up for success quickly, make sure that they feel that this is an easier process, and don't decide to just sign it and move on and hope for the best.
Okay, that's really interesting to me. A lot of fraternity and sorority members listening, they rent these group houses or apartments together as a group. How can this group establish clear expectations with their roommates, the landlord, and sometimes even a house corporation before they sign the lease?
Right. And again, I'm going to say it one more time. A lease is a legally binding contract. They have to understand what they're getting into. And when you sign a lease with another person, whether it's multiple roommates, or even just yourself and a landlord, you are now linking yourself to those people. So the number one thing to think about is how to choosing a responsible roommate, right? The people that you're going to live with need to be reliable, they need to be responsible, and they need to be respectful, right? We need to know that they're going to pay on time, that they're going to adhere to the rules of the lease. We need to know that they're going to be someone that you can depend on to do what they're supposed to do, not necessarily just trash the apartment and move on. They're going to be responsible for their guests. And we also know that they want to be respectful to the relationship. This is somebody's property, somebody's investment that they're renting to you. And it's up to that person to make sure that they're creating a good relationship with the landlord or housing core or other members of the lease, right? So that they reach out, ask questions, and get an idea of how that relationship is going to exist with that landlord or property manager. And as you stated earlier, this is an issue that impacts so many of our students. Over 75% of our upperclassmen rent off campus throughout their college experience. Over 80% of college students after they graduate are going to rent within the first 2 years of after graduation if they're not living at home. So this is something that impacts so many of our students, and we really don't spend enough time talking about the ways to make sure that you're choosing a responsible roommate, working together to make sure that you understand the rules and that you're collaborating on the things that are going to impact you. And then third, which is another interesting just way to make sure that you're finding the right people, is setting up a centralized place to store any photos or documentation of communication during your lease journey or your lease life. And when you think about that move-in inspection and you take pictures of the different rooms, was there a stain in that carpet before or after you moved in? Was that dent in the door in the drywall something that you saw before you started moving in, or is that something that you caused and now are responsible for? So if you choose the right people, collaborate on how you're going to live together and how you're going to abide by those rules, and document any potential issues, you're going to have a much smoother leasing experience.
Hmm. I love how you start out by talking about choosing the right people. That's such an important lesson. I rented a fraternity house along with some fraternity brothers. One particular guy, his name is Mark. I'm not going to give his last name. I don't want to put him on blast, but Mark was really a deadbeat. Okay. This
Mhm.
guy was just not going to pay his bills on time. And I remember we put him in charge of paying the gas, the heat for the house. And I went to school at the University of Buffalo. Okay. So we needed the heat in the wintertime, suffice it to say. And this guy in the middle of winter, we had no heat. And I'm sitting there taking a cold shower, and it is like 5 degrees outside and snowing. And I'm like, what in the world? This is going to be a complete disaster. There's going to be busted pipes all over the place. I mean, this is going to be a disaster. So you really do have to pick the right roommates. Like,
Oh yeah, look, I
it's important.
remember, we were getting toward the end of our lease senior year, and we're getting ready to do kind of our move out inspection, and we had
Mhm.
moved a there was a potted plant that we had for some reason had kept, against the wall. We go to move that plant, and all of a sudden we find this big fruit punch stain, so big red stain sitting under there that somebody obviously decided to put this pot over when it happened, and no one had moved it. And now we're sitting there trying to figure out who did it. And of course, nobody's fessing up, but
Right.
there you go. Now we have to pay for the replacement of this carpet because we didn't own up to whose responsibility that was, and no one wanted to talk about where it came from, or maybe we could have, fixed that early on. But choosing the right roommate is step one. But then, of course, collaborating, understanding the rules, understanding how that's going to impact you is the rest of it.
You see, Stan, this is a lesson. All right, guys, everyone listening, stay away from jungle juice. Okay.
There you go.
It's
There you go. I was going to say fruit punch, but we all know it.
Now, I'm kind of curious on how all of this works, right? Like, I'm wondering what tools and strategies that Lease Wisely offers to help reduce the legal disputes and improve mutual accountability among all the parties. I mean, how does this work? Do they just like upload the lease to your site and then they get an explanation of what it is?
That's exactly what we do. And when you think about disputes, they're typically over a rule, right? Some rule, something, some procedure, some process that is perceived to be broken, whether it's by the landlord or the tenant. So the first thing we're going to do is we want to create a process where we are going to put those rules, especially the most important key elements, in front of the tenant, in front of that student. So there's two places where we do that. The first one is we created an element of our site called tenant resources. And what that does is that brings in all the local and state laws that exist to help you understand things that are dictated by the state, right? Things like maximums on security deposits, things like notice of entry rules. When can your landlord enter your apartment or your house without notice or with notice? And then, of course, the restrictions or the authorizations around walkthrough inspections. Not every state says that you are guaranteed a walkthrough inspection before or after you move in. Actually, only about 25 do. So it's something that you want to understand and make sure you understand your responsibilities for that or the ability or the obligation to get one. So what we do is once that lease is uploaded, we're going to use AI to break down that lease into the key elements and key dates into a reformatted, easy to read dashboard that's now searchable. So you can search any clause in your lease just by entering a few keywords, and you're going to have access to it 24/7 in a centralized location, right? So the second thing that we're going to say is now that you've got your lease broken down, you get a chance to go through it in a few minutes and verify that you understand what's there. You now have the ability to document everything, right? So once you're in our platform, you now have access to what's called the data hub. So if you have any communication with your landlord or you take photos of anything going on in the apartment, so whether it's a dented wall or maybe a chipped door prior to moving in, you have the ability to load that into a centralized location that you and your roommates can all see in one place and be able to recall that whenever you need it. So now that you know the rules, and now that you have a shared centralized location to store your information, you're going to now be able to really understand what you are responsible when it comes to the move out process, right? And that's where the majority of disputes come up. It's right as you're moving out or right after you've moved out and you receive that security deposit that is now depleted because the landlord has said that you're responsible for things. And keep in mind, you usually don't get that information until about 30 to 45 days after you've moved out. So it's usually at a time where you've now moved somewhere else and you're having to go back and think about the place that you used to live. So again, this is our way of trying to set people up for success is to give them the opportunity to save the things from that original move out inspection in one place where you can collaborate with your roommates, make sure you understand the things that you were responsible for, and do it quickly. Make it easy to understand the lease and to recall those things. So when we talk about making sure that you're prepared to reduce the number of disputes you have, we want you to be set up for success in the beginning. We want you to be able to document everything. If you're going through your move-in inspection and you see a chip on the door and the landlord says, "Oh, don't worry about that. That's been here. That's okay." Don't just trust that that's going to be okay. Take a photo, timestamp it. Use a platform to communicate with your landlord to get documented sign off that that is okay, and save that so that when they come back and say, "Hey, it's $100 a door and we're charging you for this door," you can pull that up and say, "Oh no, we talked about this and you signed off on it. And here's a copy of that email or text where you said that you were okay with this." And we're able to make sure that we're not charged for that as an undergrad. We have over 50% of new renters are charged for something that in one way or another they feel was caused because of a break or something that they didn't adhere to in the lease. And that equates to hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for college students that they lose, especially when you're living in a house with multiple roommates.
Yeah, that's super helpful in order to get those security deposits back and eliminate those surprise repair costs. I think that's really good. I also serve as an alumni volunteer for a particular fraternity at Cornell. I'm sure many listeners can figure out what that is. How can fraternity and sorority housing corporations or alumni boards use platforms like yours in order to streamline the onboarding process for new members that are moving into the chapter house?
So what we've seen, and I experienced this actually, we work with our particular chapter at IU for Kappa Sig in this way. But the biggest thing to do is to do it at the right time. Um, Onboarding is an overwhelming process, as we've mentioned, right? You've got this 40-page lease you're expecting students to sign. Don't do it at the most overwhelming time. Don't do it when members are coming back to in the fall for class or in the spring for class. They're seeing their brothers and sisters for the first time in a little bit. They're moving in, their parents are there, they're getting ready to go back to school, they're excited. The last thing they want to do is sit down and talk about a lease. So the best thing to do is utilize a platform where you can load everything in advance. So with our platform, for example, you're able to load the lease in advance, go through it, make sure that everything that you want called out is in there, in the platform, even things that you might not consider in the lease, right? So one good example, and something that I personally experienced was as a kid from New York, I didn't grow up with a garbage disposal in my house. So I actually probably didn't see a garbage disposal till I was almost 21 years old. But when I got into that apartment and I signed my lease, I was responsible for minor plumbing issues. And guess what? First time I shoved some spaghetti down that garbage disposal, I understood what that meant. So it's you have the ability as an alumni advisor or as a housing corp manager or president to actually load best practices into the platform so that you guarantee that your members sign off on reading these things so that they don't make those mistakes in real life. They kind of understand that as they get going. So again, make sure you're doing these things in advance, then sharing you actually can preload that profile for your members, share it out to them personally, share it out to people they might want involved. So share it to their parents, share it to their mentors, share it to their co-signers. You have the ability through the platform to make sure that everyone who is interested or somewhat linked to this leasing experience has a copy of what they're signing and has access to the data hub. So everything that your student needs is preloaded into the platform so that they can review it, so that they can sign off on it and verify that everything's correct and they're ready for it, all before they come back for that kind of first week of classes and a time when they're extremely distracted and they're probably not going to pay a lot of attention to something like a 40-page lease.
Yeah.
So again, those are the types of ways that we want to make sure that we're setting up not just our students, but our housing cores and our alumni boards for success in this experience. And then, of course, we want them to do everything that they need to do to understand what the apartment or house or room looked like before they moved in, so that when it comes time to move out, they can make that comparison and make sure that they didn't cause damage that is now going to be removed from their security deposits as they leave.
Yeah. That's a really, really great tool. I know we're running out of time on this particular interview, but I know you've read probably hundreds or thousands of leases in your time. And as a fraternity member, I think you have a unique perspective because fraternity and sorority chapters, they're renting houses from these alumni corporations or potentially from the university. So,
Mhm.
what are some of the red flags that the officers of the chapter should be looking out for in those lease agreements?
Yep. So the ability to protect security deposits and the ability to work with property managers are is probably that's probably the number one question that we get. And to be honest, the red flags are pretty much the same no matter who you're renting from, whether it's a university, a housing core, a property manager, a landlord, a major large property manager, or anyone for that matter. And it really boils down to the three L's, right? It's the lease, the late fees, and the landlord. When it comes to the lease, right? Always get a documented lease. Never agree to just a handshake. And you'll be surprised how many people say, oh, we just kind of agreed to this. They told me the payments and we're moving forward. And just to be clear, in some states, that is legal. So it's important for you to understand your local rules and always get a documented lease. Beware of vague or complex language, legalese in your lease that you don't understand. Ask questions. Make sure that you can live with any of the restrictions that they're going to put in that lease. Some leases might dictate when you can have guests over, how long they can stay, whether or not you can have a pet. Whether or not you can make changes to the apartment and how you can make changes. You'd be surprised how many leases actually don't allow you to use command strips or adhesives to hang things on the wall when you think that that's a better option than a nail. So make sure you're understanding this stuff so it doesn't come back to bite you in the end. And the third and the last thing on a lease is to watch out for automatic renewals. When we talk about making sure that you understand your deadlines and times, the notice to vacate and the notice to renew is something that you have to watch out for, or else you might be on the hook for another month or even another year of cost if you don't take care of that on time. Second are late fees. Make sure that those late that you understand the penalties that you're going to have to adhere to and that they're not excessive. And that you can understand if it's a daily late fee, a monthly late fee, a percentage, a dollar amount, but understand all those penalties, all the hidden fees, administrative costs, and beware of non-refundable security deposits, but really understand those fees that you're responsible for. And third is that landlord, unreasonable demands on maintenance. What are you really responsible for? Are you responsible for, pipes that are under your apartment? Are you only responsible for minor things? Are you responsible for light bulbs? Are you responsible for batteries? Are you responsible for making sure that thermostat stays on? But test that experience, communicate with your landlord in advance, and make sure that they're good at responding to you before you sign that lease. But always be prepared to understand those three elements, that lease, that late fee, and that landlord, to make sure that you're preparing yourself to protect yourself against money being removed from your security deposit in the end.
That's excellent advice. Really, really helpful. I appreciate all of that information. You're just a wealth of information. Now, I know you're in the Columbus, Ohio area, and I know of a real small upstart university that's in town in Columbus, Ohio, the Ohio State University. So I'm wondering the next time I'm speaking at the Ohio State University, where should I be going for a great meal in town?
I'll just tell you, I love to eat, and and as you mentioned earlier, this is one of my favorite topics. So I'll give you two. If you're looking for that dive bar but amazing burger experience in a really cool spot, I advise you to go check out Ringside Cafe. Ringside Cafe is the oldest tavern in Columbus. It's got a rich with history, all kinds of cool stuff, even haunted ghost tours. But if you want one of the best burgers in the country, go to Ringside Cafe. Check out the Buster Douglas mural. I don't know anywhere else in the world that has a Buster Douglas mural, but they do. And they also have these really cool stained glass windows that are tied to some of the political history out there in Columbus, because it's right across the street and has a secret tunnel that connects it to the Capitol building. The second spot I'll tell you about is that spot if you really want a great steak dinner, and that's called the Top. The Top Steakhouse is what you'd imagine Frank Sinatra and Sammy and Dean Martin used to hang out at. You walk through a spade-shaped a kind of entrance to get in there, white linen tables, waiters and waitresses walking around with these big tubs of sour cream and butter. But one of the best steaks I've had, especially not just in Columbus, but in the country. And they also have a pretty cool piano bar in the evenings that you can just hang out and have a great meal at.
That sounds great. I'll meet you at the top, Stan.
Oh, anytime, man,
I'll
anytime.
meet you there. That sounds absolutely delicious. I mean, who's going to say no to
Oh, it's
that?
the spot, man.
It's awesome. All right. So, if our college students listening to this interview right now are intrigued and they want to use the Lease Wisely platform for all of their leases in college, how can they get started on the platform?
All right, it's very easy. Just go to leasewisely.com. You can do that today and sign up. And we offer a basic self-guided review that gives you everything that we talked about today. It breaks down your lease for you. It gives you access to everything, all the tools we talked about. But we also offer an expert review, and you'll see that on the site where we'll actually help you go through your lease, make sure that everything's there, call out some of these red flags, and provide that back to you. But today, or anytime anyone's listening to this podcast, or for any of your listeners, we'll offer a free self-guided review. If they send me an email at stan.lucas@leasewisely.com and mention this podcast, we'll get you all set up with a coupon code and get you in there for free. If you're a housing coordinator, an alumni advisor, and you think this is something you want to offer to your house, whether it's fraternity, sorority, or any club or organization on campus at the enterprise level, just again, feel free to reach out to us and send an email to stan.lucas@leasewisely.com. Mention this, and we'd be glad to work with you to provide this to the entire house. But all you have to do is go to leasewisely.com and click Get Started, and you'll be able to kind of be walked through the process of getting yourself set up.
That is fantastic. Well, Stan, thank you so much for offering that benefit to our listeners. You get a free self-guided review of your lease. All you have to do is mention the show and email Stan, and he will send you the discount code. I mean, it really doesn't get
Absolutely.
any better than that. I mean, he's giving you free stuff. Make sure you take advantage of that. And Stan, I appreciate what you do. I think it's super important. I think you're the only one that I've ever heard that's actually offering this type of service. And so thank you for what you do. I think it's really important.
Well, thank you very much, and the same to you, man. Thank you for getting out there and trying to educate all our brothers and sisters out there in the Greek experience and making sure that they're safe and that they're making good decisions and being set up for success.
That's it. That's my whole life mission. So until I'm in the ground, that's what I'm going to be working on. And it continues. I think you have to be just really consistent in terms of that education and getting out there and meeting students on a weekly basis and educating. And slowly but surely, we're making progress. So
Mhm.
that's really exciting to see when you have things like the Stop Campus Hazing Act that comes out to really have a federal law around hazing prevention. I mean, that's something
Right,
we've been
right.
asking for decades. And now we actually have federal law, which is just wonderful. So I
Mhm.
think we are absolutely making progress. I'm super excited about that. And yeah, as long as we have dedicated alumni like you that are helping fraternity and sorority members to make it a better experience going forward, I have no doubt that fraternity and sorority life is going to be relevant and is going to grow over the next century as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this conversation with Stan, I want you to like it and I want you to share it with other fraternity and sorority members in your chapter that are signing leases, which is probably a significant number of them because we know that they're signing those off-campus leases. So send them this interview so that way they can learn directly from the authority, directly from Stan before they sign that lease and make sure they don't make any mistakes going into it. So thank you so much, and we appreciate you being here. We'll see you on the next episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Bye for now.